Season 1, Episode 2, After the Storm. The second episode starts with Amy lying in bed, trying to sleep, but is having flashbacks of when her and her mom set out to save Spartan, a troubled horse, and ended up in a terrible accident. Amy suddenly wakes up and sits up in her bed with a ton of memories going through her head. The next day, Lou asks her sister how she's doing after the accident since she could hear her talking in her sleep last night. Amy, who is rushing around the house and seems a bit nervous, says that everything's fine. Lou then wonders how one of her clients' horses is doing because she wants to know if they can go home soon. Amy blows her sister off by saying the horse is doing well and walks out of the door to meet her friend Sverre, who just pulled up. Lou interprets what Amy said and thinks the client's horse is ready to leave. She calls Mrs. Roach to give her the good news about her horse being able to go home. After school, Sverre and Amy head out to saddle up their horses for a ride. Ty comes into the barn and wonders where everyone is going. When he finds out they're leaving, he gets upset because he's left with all the chores. Mallory offers to help clean out the stalls. Jack overhears what Mallory said and reminds her that a few minutes ago, when he asked her to clean out Copper's stall, she claimed she didn't do horse poo. When out riding, Sverre tells Amy she forgot to mention how hot Ty is. Amy explains that Ty's only working there because he's on probation and she doesn't want to know what he did. Amy also mentions that he's kind of the moodiest person she's ever met. When going past Mr. Mallon's horse farm, she ends up having a quick flashback of the night she went with her mom to save Spartan. When Mrs. Roach brings Swallow home, Ashley goes to ride him. When outside of the ring, on the driveway, a truck drives by, which has Swallow's spook all over again. He jumps around, knocking Ashley to the ground. Mrs. Roach realizes right there that his fear of vehicles has yet to be cured, which has her wondering if what she heard about Amy inheriting her mother's gift is true or just fake. After Amy is done riding, she walks into the barn to see her mother's horse, Pegasus. She looks in his pail and notices he hasn't been eating lately and looks depressed. She asks Ty where Swallow went, as his stall is empty. Ty mentions that Mrs. Roach came by and picked him up a few hours ago. When Amy hears that Swallow has gone back home, she heads into the house to find Lou and question her on why she sent him home, as he wasn't ready. Lou explains that earlier in the day she asked how he was doing, and Amy said everything was fine. Lou took that to mean Swallow was ready to go home. Amy tells her when she said he was fine, it meant he was improving, but he wasn't ready to leave yet. Just then, Amy looks out the window and sees Mrs. Roach's car pulling in the driveway. Mrs. Roach comes running to the front door with an angry look on her face. She demands to know what happened with her horse. Amy and Lou both apologize for letting him go. Mrs. Roach doesn't want to hear another word from them and leaves to head over to Maggie's diner. When there, she starts to backtalk Heartland, mentioning how bad their business is and that they're just going to fail miserably. Everyone in the diner ends up hearing, and the word travels fast about how bad Heartland's business is. Dinner, Jack tells Amy he heard Sverre would like her to get back into show jumping, and he thinks it's a great idea and she should go for it. Amy tells him she will think about it. Out in the barn, Ty asks Amy about her show jumping. He wonders how she practices, and she mentions their neighbor has a jumping course which they let them use. Ty listens to what she's saying and what was said at dinner and thinks she should get back into it. Amy tells her that when she show jumped back in the day, her mom was her coach, and she doesn't feel it would be the same to do it without her. He convinces her that Spartan could use the fresh air and it would be good for him to get out of his stall as he's been cooped up in there all day. When Sverre and Amy find out they're not able to go to the neighbors to practice anymore, it means they won't be able to compete. Ty overhears the problem and gets a crazy idea in his head of how he can help them still be able to enter the show. Ty leaves on his bike to find an area that is clear and empty, build a jumping course for Amy and Sverre to practice on for the show coming up. Off in the distance, Jack sees that Ty's leaving, which gets him upset because he's supposed to be helping with the chores. Mallory follows Ty down to the pasture, and when she appears, she wants to know what he's got going on and why he came down there alone. He explains that he's building a jumping course for Amy. Mallory begs to let him help. Ty agrees to let her stay and help, so long as she stops talking so much. Later, Lou comes into the barn to find Amy and apologize for all the problems she's caused. Amy doesn't accept her apology, and Lou finds out she can't seem to win with her sister, so leaves to head back to the house. Ty and Mallory come into the barn, excited to show Amy what they've been up to. Jack looks over towards the barn and sees the three of them getting into Ty's truck, which has him even angrier because they're all leaving and haven't done any of their jobs for the day. While showing Amy the course he built for her to practice jumping, he ends up missing his probation officer, who has come for his checkup. When the officer comes to Heartland, Jack meets him and agrees to be Ty's sponsor since Marion, his original sponsor, has recently passed away. Amy's excited when she sees the jumping course Ty and Mallory have worked so hard on to build for her. When Ty explains she will no longer have to fight with Spartan to get him into the trailer and she can ride him down to the course. When hearing what Ty said, she thinks he's doubting her skills about being able to get Spartan into the trailer. Amy gets upset and storms off back to his truck. That night, Amy has another flashback of the night her and her mom went to get Spartan. She leaves her room and heads to the loft to find Ty. She wants Ty to help her train Spartan to enter the trailer without freaking out. He wonders why she's decided to do it now, since it's the middle of the night. After getting Spartan trained to enter the trailer without freaking out, they bring Jack over to see the work they have accomplished. Before he leaves to do some other jobs, he asks if he can have a word with Ty. He tells him that he doesn't see any jobs getting done around the ranch, which ticks him off. He then mentions that there's a rail that needs fixing and he would like for him to have it done by the time he gets back. He also explains that he will not tell him when he will be arriving home. Ty works on fixing the gate rail so he doesn't get yelled at again by Jack. Amy is working at training her horse to feel comfortable entering the trailer. She opens all the doors and tempts him in with a carrot. After the plan ends up working, she thanks Ty and tells him, since he seems to know a lot about horses, he should try riding them. Ty declines her offer and says he would rather stick to motorcycles. When Lou sees Amy walk through the door, she tells her that Mrs. Loach would like her to work with Swallow again, as he's not progressing with the new trainer they've hired. Before Swallow comes over, Nick, the best show jumper in town, visits and asks Amy if she could work with one of his horses, since he's heard really good things about her from Scott their vet. Amy agrees to work with his horse. In the end of this episode, we see Ty and Amy getting along better, and she ends up show jumping again, since Ty made her a course of her own to practice on. Amy starts working on fixing horses again when she's given a second chance. In addition to Amy having another chance, we see Jack agree to be Ty's sponsor and allow him to prove himself and get back on the right track while completing his time at Heartland.